Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. We are here with some of our guests from last time to talk about some of the creepy shit that is in the world of darkness, from vampire to guru to wraith to mage. It's just going to be a festival of fuckery. So I figure we'll start out with just a general, like, what settings do people like for creepiness? You know, like, what is your favorite setting? If you're gonna run something that's gonna be a little bit like Halloweeny, or a little more like on the scarier, or drawing out dread type of settings, and we'll go counterclockwise again. So we'll start with Mr. Nate over here.
Well, my favorite settings to run anything usually are the old standbys, which is just Vampire the Masquerade because it's the one I know the best. I feel like perhaps it is a weakness of my character, but I like to I like to not have to think about the rules, and I know the rules for Vampire the best. But I mean, always the creepiest stuff to me was always like Call of Cthulhu. But yeah, I don't often run like games specifically designed to be creepy. But I do love to play in them. I do greatly enjoy to be creeped out.
Okay. Jesse?
Well, little known fact, my first ever ran LARP was actually Wraith. And Wraith really fucking lends itself to some truly horrifying shit, which is a lot of fun. Everybody knows I love Werewolf, and you can do a lot with just Fomori, not even necessarily worm-tainted ones.
We try not to fault you for that, so go ahead.
That's what I say to that asshole. But you can do a lot of really creepy shit with Fomori. They don't have to even be worm-tainted. They could actually be the wild-aligned ones, or even
if you don't love Fomori, I don't know if I can have you in my life.
Fomori are a different story, I think.
Well, and that's not just like that's not the end-all be-all of the horror factor in Werewolf, because there's a lot more that can go on with it that makes it truly terrifying.
So is it Werewolf or Wraith for you? Like, which one, where do you set the line there?
Okay, first of all, when it comes to horror, I don't have a line. And if there is a line, I pull vault across it regularly.
So let's enforce one upon you then. If you had to pick one or the other, couldn't go back and forth, which would you pick?
A lot of people are expecting me to say Werewolf, but it's Wraith.
Okay.
If I could get a decent enough group of people that are willing to take the horribly, horribly depressing world that is Wraith, I'd fucking do it.
Chat says Fomori are Gaia's true children.
I mean, technically, they're not Gaia's children. But we can get to that, because that's looking further than Gaia. That's looking back to the primordial triad.
So, Jeff, what about you?
So I have to agree with Nate on this one and go with Vampire the Masquerade, or at least that setting anyways. But the best ones I played in were Hunter. You were running a Hunter game out of New World, actually, where we were this family of interesting people who got dragged into a bunch of shit, and it was very horror-like. Like, there was people like the fucking hill people, and then we got to like the Gourmand house, and it was a story for another time, but it worked really well for horror. And then of course Call of Cthulhu is always great. I own this little splat book a long time ago. It was called Little Nightmares, and I never got to play it, never got to run it, but reading through it, it seemed really fucking creepy. You're basically playing kids that are living through nightmares, but like your stuffed animals will help ward off nightmare and shit like that. But it was all based around personal horror.
There's
So that sounds like a fairy tale game that I remember. I never got to play it, but I read through the books when I lived with a friend.
And
that's a very similar one.
It kind of sounds to me like Kids on Bikes, at least from what I've never played that game. I just know it's like very much a Stranger Things type of gathering of kids and going through like monsters and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how some chat can crucify me. I'm sorry. I'm not sure about that setting, but that kind of was what comes to mind when I hear about like, oh, it's kids and you're fighting off monsters. Like, seems like Kids on Bikes.
Yeah.
Kids on Bikes, Stranger Things.
Vampire.
Every Stephen King book ever.
Those are the best.
For me, I really don't have one. Because I think if I had to choose, I'd probably pick New World of Darkness, and I'd play Vampire, but I'd do it either as brand new vampires or humans. Because a new WOD or Chronicles of Darkness, Requiem, there are so many bloodlines that you can toss stuff at a player that they don't know what the hell this type of vampire does, and it keeps it new, and it keeps them kind of guessing. Like, can they do that? Like, I really don't know. Unless somebody's just well versed in the clans and bloodlines and Chronicles of Darkness and Requiem, usually it's kind of surprising. Which is why you come into things like the Gourmand or the Oberlocks, you know, crazy shit like that fits very much into a horror movie kind of trope. Like, you got the Gourmands who are, you know, not Gourmands, Malaria? Maceris? Can't remember off the top of my head. Marcellus? Yeah.
Marcellus.
They eat people. Like, literally, they eat people. And they store, like, the things that they eaten of that people as additional blood points. And they can do more stuff with it than you normally can do.
Yeah, so you threw that at the Halloween Hunter game last year.
Yeah.
That was fun.
And the year before that, or the original one of that, was the Oberlocks. And those were the hillbilly gangrel.
Right. The hills have eyes looking motherfuckers.
Yeah, the ones that get older. So, like, you can actually have, like, an old vampire who's, like, been around for 90 years. He actually looks like 100 and some odd years old. But he's still a vampire. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, that was great. Grandpa.
So, yeah, for me, I think as somebody who's running something, I like the New World of Darkness, like Chronicles of Darkness and Requiem more for that, because there's just a broader, like, selection of paints, I guess, to paint with, you know. Call of Cthulhu, I'm not a big fan of for horror games, which is weird. But the reason
That is weird.
Well, the reason is you kind of know what to expect, right? Don't read the book and somebody's going insane.
I mean, unless you're dealing with people who don't understand the Cthulhu mythos.
I mean, once a year, isn't a don't read the book and somebody's going insane? Isn't that acceptable? Like,
no, it is. It is 100%. It totally is. It's just, it's not my cup of tea to run or to play in, because of the fact that it's so well known, it's so popular that people kind of know what to avoid.
I just want to know who's reading the book in 2020. Like,
Paranoia.
somebody already read it in 2019. That's the problem.
Right.
That's what got us here.
And now we got a
They
bunch of
didn't return
mummies
the fucking
popping
slab.
up. Speaking of
They
mummies,
didn't return the slab, I'm telling you.
we have mummies popping up now, and all these unopened, like, tombs and caskets being discovered. Has anybody played Mummy here? Like, as a setting, has that got a creep factor to it? Because I played the old Mummy back in the day before they redid the whole thing.
Which mummy are you talking about? Chronicles or?
Either one, really. For Chronicles, I've never touched it. Right. For Classical World of Darkness, I played before the Resurrection, I think, because Resurrection's where the souls merge, right? Like they did the demon light situation with it.
I was looking into it to join an org game and then decided better of it.
Yeah, never,
Okay.
never played any.
But
I don't.
you're
That's
right,
the one
the
core
souls
book I don't have.
Okay.
The demon, the mummy,
Mummy the
Demon
Resurrection.
I have
Fallen,
the-
Mummy the Resurrection.
I have the first and second edition, when they were still like considered vampire books or whatever. But I've actually never read them because I never had a reason to, and I don't know.
You didn't like Setites.
As far as I knew, Mummy was kind of like wonk. But
Pretty much.
Yeah, Mummy was weird. I played a Mummy in live action in a game that Jeff played in, and that was all sorts of fucked up.
Demons in
Yeah, demons in a box, throwing people's cell phones and shit, and radios, I think, and then making golems that had like 40 plus traits on ties.
You had your
I don't even want to know.
condoms?
Mummies do stupid shit.
players. Demons in a
That
box.
sounds dumb as fuck.
Yeah, demons do crazy shit. No, demons. Mummies do dumb shit. So yeah,
Thank you, Russ.
Mummy is weird. Hey, Queen. Hello.
Abigail.
Oh, that's not the name I'm used to seeing. Hello, Gail.
That's because Gail changed her name like 6 months ago.
Well, fair.
We missed-
I don't pay attention to these things. Apparently, I'm a bad friend. So, all right, that's Mummy. No, that's a non-starter here, I guess. That's
Yeah,
kind of
it seemed like it could have some creepy shit, but mostly it was
I,
just one.
I feel like every time I hear like a non-starter of that nature, my brain instantly wants to go read all of the books for it and run it just to see if I can like
right to find something
run,
redeemable.
run a worthwhile game. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to, I might actually have them. I'll have to check my PDF files, but I might have them.
I do not acknowledge PDFs as being real books. So if I can track down a copy of the core book and I can pick it up, it could be on the agenda.
I loved PDFs, and then my iPad died, and now it's sad face. But
I have this weird thing that happens when I read PDFs. I fall asleep.
I definitely stay awake longer when I have a book in front of me as opposed to PDF. So I can agree with that.
I like having books, which is why, like, when I went to the local store and I picked up my new book, I got the physical copy because it's awesome.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, I got all
Really
find
good,
more.
really good production value. Actually, I'm really liking the book so far. We'll see how it goes for Halloween. But back to topic at hand. So yeah, Mummy, we can just kind of yeet that away, as the kids say these days.
Yeeter be yeeter.
That's awkward. One setting that for me was surprisingly devoid of any real creepiness was Demon the Fallen.
Yeah.
Oh, sad day. Really?
Yeah, I'd say when I read through it, when Ray and I were joining an org game for Demon, like I had to read through all the books because I'm like, I know nothing of this system, but fuck it, I want to try it. It's surprisingly like there's nothing that really, but it makes sense. Like there's nothing that scares a demon.
Yeah, no, it didn't seem like from my perspective, having read that book, it didn't seem like it was really designed for the creep factor. You know, yeah, I mean, like you said, what do demons really have to be creeped out by?
Right.
Of course, you could inject creepiness into that, but yeah, it gave me very vibes of like the angels waiting for the apocalypse, right? Like they're just hanging out in the waiting room. You know,
Right.
it wasn't.
Yeah, that's effectively how it feels when you're playing it. You're just kind of sitting there looking at everything else around you going, children. Fucking children.
Right.
They're all children.
I think more so, and actually touching on what Jess is saying here, I think for me, when playing Demon, there's no like, I'm evil and wicked and creepy. It's like, all of you have lost your fucking minds. Like, we fixed all this. This is all great, but you've all lost your fucking minds and just ruined everything. And it's
Sucked it up while we were asleep. What the fuck?
it's like a contempt simulator. If that makes sense. Like, it seriously is, because you're looking at all these species, like for example vampires, and you're like, oh fucking give me a break, vampires. Ooh. I am
Do you
deaf.
want to know the actual Truth of King? Because I was there.
Right. It's kind of like anticlimactic playing a demon. I thought it'd be a lot more fun. I thought there'd be more struggle between hell and like apathy and all this other stuff. But when I played it, even when you're really trying to get into the character, I was playing a fiend in live action. And trying to get really into the character, it's like, so we're not afraid of anything. Yes, we're concerned that if their physical shell dies, we might get dragged back to hell, but we have backups for that, aka packs. What do I have to be afraid of?
I think
I made
that
pacts with fucking changelings in that game. Like,
Yeah, that was weird.
That's a game that can bring some creep factor. Fucking change.
I think that in order for the creep factor that I think was built into that game, in order for that to become apparent, your storyteller needs to spend a lot of time with you individually to work on that personal horror piece, because there's more than those like, I'm a demon, these are the struggles of a demon, but there's that struggle between you and the person you inhabit, and what memories are yours, what memories are theirs. And so you really do have to focus on like that personal aspect of it. And I think that can be hard, especially in a LARP. Like, good luck on that. You're relegated to side scenes. You're just a badass until side scenes.
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree with that.
At a table, you know, that can get very time consuming, and you end up encountering that situation where you have, you know, 3 people at the table who are bored and one person who's like, oh, this game's the shit, you know.
Right. I think Demon, in the way it's written, and this particular thing you bring up, Nate, it really sells that game to me as like a 1 to 2 player game, you know, against all the other shit that's out there. You have 1 or 2 demons that have come together, because it's written, when you read it, it's actually written for like almost coteries, right? Like packs of demons, but you run into that problem that you just brought up. Like, you can't really get into this idea of horror and your memories versus your host memories. Like, if you read the fluff in the demon books and then you try to play that out, especially in a LARP, it's almost impossible, because
Yeah,
yes,
it's
you can
exceedingly difficult.
you can put yourself through that mental struggle, but there's nothing there to really act out or play upon. You just have this scene in your mind, and at that point, you're like, why did I even come to game? I could have just pretended I was at this game the whole time, and I'd have the same effect. And that makes Demon a bit of a hard one, and that's why for me, I was surprised. I'm like, Demon, you'd think with the manifestations of like the Defilers and like some of the other Ravagers, they would be like a lot more scary. And yeah, you can get like crazy with the way you design your apocalyptic form with the player's guide and all that, but it's not like Cathedral of Flesh creepy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to be. I'm like, we're playing demons. Why can't we have this thing? Why can't we be this? And it's like, you just can't. Because you can't.
Even if we're playing them as fallen angels, there's still a layer and a level where you're not good. You're not the good guy.
Well, you're not good.
You're also not the bad guy, but...
Well, you're not good to begin with anyways. It's just whether or not you want to destroy humanity or keep it around or just do Faustian bargains, right? Depending on what faction you're in. And even then, it's just weird because the problem that I had with Demon is that there's no final death, right? Unless somebody essentially diablerizes you, which can happen, but that's so rare and destroys you so terribly that's like, I would never ever do this. So I'm constantly taking out people's shells, but I know they're just going to pop back in like maybe 10 years or so. So it forces you to play.
No problem for 10 years down the road, mate.
Yeah, it forces you to play like, not so much upfront violence, but like getting around things, which is funny because almost all their powers that you can get that are actually interesting are around violence, or especially if you're low on you're high on torment, they're violent in aspect or appearance. They kind of propel you that way, which is weird.
Well, also, it begs the question: is that a game you can only play with the looming threat of apocalyptic end to the world? Because it was a game that was created to sort of herald in the end of the world of darkness.
Right.
So yeah, without that like finality of of existence, is it a playable game? It's the same thing with Orpheus. Although I think Orpheus could stand alone on its own without really any of the world of darkness, and that's kind of how it's designed. Orpheus is a game that's pure creep factor.
Yeah.
I know nothing of this.
I actually had one of the anthology books they put out. I don't know if it's the only one, but all the different little short stories they had. And it was, Orpheus was a cool game. Like, the ability to be able to go into the Shadowlands for limited periods of time and dealing with all the ghosts that are there, the wraiths that are there, the spirits. And then some of the stories they told those spirits are just crazy. Like, they told one story in a book that was about everybody being trapped in this building, and they didn't know they were dead, but they're already dead. All of them are dead already.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's one where this big bad guy, this like horrific freaking person, like this guy was real slime of a human being. He actually managed to achieve transcendence, and it pissed off one of the spirits so fucking bad. Like, a guy like that gets to go somewhere to his version of heaven. What the fuck is this? And just lost her mind. It was an interesting book. I never actually got to play Orpheus though.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, the next game that I run for, like, the Inner Sanctum, the people I know. Orpheus, I think, is going to be the game that I run, because it's a game that can be completely self-contained.
Yeah.
And there's basically every book is like, here's the next story, and then it has an end. That's it. It's over. You're done. So I think that'll be the next one that I end up running.
Now, do we know if Ghost Stories is going to tie into Orpheus?
I believe that some of the concepts of Orpheus are going to be introduced into that 20th the 20th anniversary edition book that is on Kickstarter now. However, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But I will very soon be talking to someone who does. So this is something I'll find out.
Awesome.
Something we'll all find out too. Is it going to be put on YouTube?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have
As they were,
I don't have like I don't have casual conversations anymore.
It's all industry stuff.
Yeah, I'd say everything is monetized, but I'm not making any money from anything. So it's just
Not yet. Not yet. Will.
It's just produced.
Right. So
If you it will come.
so Orpheus definitely a winner, I think, in the creep department. I think that ties very well into some of the Wraith stuff. But I think Wraith for me though,
Oh, yeah.
isn't so much creepy as it is just fucking depressing. There are things about Wraith that are creepy as shit. Soul forging for one.
Oh yeah.
Moliate
Here,
for
look, I have
another.
a table that screams at you every time you sit at it.
Wraith hits me as one of those games that if you play it, it's depressing. But if you interact with it, like as a Giovanni or as a person who is a medium or it is tied to a ghost, that's where the creep factor comes
Yeah.
in. It's not you being one. It's in the presence of them and the things like the necra, the big fucking sacrificial wraith pits. I forgot what the fuck they're called. They're like necra somethings, but I was
Necropolises?
like, the fuck? It might. I don't know.
I think you're thinking necropolises, which is the large gatherings of wraiths in places
Well,
where terrible things have
It's
happened.
the cities, yeah.
Yeah, but there are pits within those cities that can be used, and it's usually a soul forging pit, is where they would chuck the souls that
Or a
were
Nile.
too weak.
Yeah.
A Nile
Nihil
would
to
be another
travel
one.
through the Tempest. Yeah.
But yeah, it's for those that are too weak, or those who have pissed off somebody who's higher up in the echelons of like the Legion or something like that, where they literally get turned into items. Sometimes, pardon me, I have to mod for a
Coins,
second.
pens.
Coins, pens, desks. At one point, happened to one of my characters. They got
Socks.
turned into a fucking brick.
Yeah, Micah. in the
Yeah.
org.
Like a
I'm sorry.
1.0, the werewolf got turned into a
Not funny.
fucking brick.
But it's funny.
Oh no, it was hilarious when one of her friends who survived her,
Threw her at the
Uh,
person
when-
that killed her.
yeah, went into the Shadowlands, found the brick that contained her soul, walked up to the person and went, "This is her. I'm going to get revenge for her by hitting you with this brick." And he went, "Okay, sure." And he almost got one-shotted
Obliviate.
because
it's
that was
bitch.
a 9-ag fucking brick
Yeah.
to
Damn.
the face.
Obliviate's a bitch.
Oh yeah,
Um,
dude fucking relented too. It was so stupid. I'm like, "Oh, you're dumb."
yeah,
Oh, you're dumb.
Wraith for me, I think you're definitely on the money there, Jeff. I think playing it's depressing because it's amazing to read. Amazing freaking book. I have the W20 book for that, and it's an awesome read. I've read through it a couple times because like, maybe I'll run this, and then I had the realization like, this is fucking depressing. I don't want to run this anymore. However, when you're interacting with it, it's a different story. But I think that too often, Giovanni or anybody else who has necromancy, like Samedi or whatever, it's just you do your thing and you're done.
Yeah,
Right.
you get in the bones.
This,
You get in
all
the
of
brick.
this.
You get into this.
That's my least favorite thing about playing with quote unquote knowledgeable gamers when it comes to like, Wraith the Oblivion or Mage the Ascension or anything that's outside of like, I'm playing a vampire, but I get to interact with this other world, is when they take their knowledge as a player and they think, well, I'm playing a Giovanni, so I know everything about Wraith. And I'm like,
Right.
Giovanni don't even know they're called Wraiths. So
Yeah,
how
they just
about
call them
we
ghosts.
like just plug it up? Stop using your knowledge and removing all the mysticism out of this other world, and just treating it like it's rote. Like, I'll just take that wraith and I'll put him in this.
Right.
Come on, dude. Like this is not just like, this is like Aztecs sacrificing to their gods. They don't know what the gods desire. They don't, it's like there's ritual to it. It is a sacred, behavior. It's a sacred ritual, a sacred rite that's been passed down by ignorant vampires for hundreds of years. Like,
Right.
stop treating it like it's just, I roll a d20 and I get a hit and I win.
Right.
I hate it.
Hey, Boobell.
And
Yeah.
it takes, sorry.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Converted
No.
his
No.
sabre.
Oh, thank you, Boobell. That's awesome. I appreciate it, man.
No, I was just going to say it takes all of the mystique that the storyteller can put into it and all of that creep factor that the storyteller can put into it, and it takes it right out of their hands.
Yeah.
And then
It's a lot
it's
harder
just
to do.
like, yeah, it's basically just might as well be a game of roll initiative.
As somebody who
Like I said, I think that's more comes from a LARP, and people who are used to LARPing, just because there's a
I've encountered it.
I think it's in
Tabletop.
tabletop too.
That's fair.
It's
Yeah.
it's the problem of the player having more knowledge than their character should have,
Yeah.
which happens when a system's been around for 25, 30 years.
Actually a situation that I've encountered that this is reminiscent of was, and I won't spend too much time on this because I know it's not really the focus, but you know, Jeff and I used to participate in a game online, and we had a player come on, and I believe he was playing a Giovanni, but either way, he was playing a necromancer. And one of his first questions was, "Hey, are you using the rules out of the vampire book for spirits, or are you using wraith rules for spirits?" And we were like, "We're using wraith rules." And what that player interpreted it as was, I can know all the stuff that's in the Wraith book. So he would come to us and he'd be like, I want a specific type of Wraith out of this guild. And we were like, how would you have a clue what a guild is? And he's like, well, you said you're using the rules out of here, and I'm a Giovanni, so why wouldn't I know that?
How
And I'm
much
like,
Wraith lore you got?
how would you?
Lures
Well, and that's the beauty part of it. We're using 20th anniversary edition rules. There's no such thing as Wraith lore. If you want Wraith lore, you roll occult. Like you get to know what an occult roll provides you. If you have a specialty in spirit lore, that's fine. But you don't get to know what a Wraith is. You, the player, know. But you let us tell the story. You're not here to tell the story. You're here to participate in it, play an active role in it. But stop telling me. And like, not only did this person not want to hear anything we said, but then was like, you fucking suck. Like, just, it was the worst. And it was like the first person where I was like, fuck you, bye-bye. You're done. Like, sorry, you don't get to talk shit and then continue to play in this game and act like we're assholes because you want to use your out-of-game knowledge in-game. So...
Yeah, I think for me that goes hand in hand with people trying to just view things as pure mechanics. Like, I know the mechanic for this is this, so I know how to do this. And for me, that got interesting because running Sabbat, I knew we were going to have a Harbinger of Skulls.
Yep.
And he wanted to play with spirits. I'm like, cool. So I designed the whole underworld in Rockford. Like where the necropolis was, who the gangs were further out that weren't actually associated with anything with the necropolis. Did the whole thing. And he ran into this wraith who was a specter working for a Nephrak, and he had like next to no Shadowlands lore or wraith lore, but he just knows he can talk to this guy, and this wraith is very friendly to talk to him because he's a vampire. He's a thing of death. Like, I can twist this guy around my finger and get him to do shit for me in the real world to fuck everything up on this side over. So essentially the Harbinger wanted to get information on the Anarchs, and the guy's like, yeah, I can let you know who these dead guys walking around are, and let you know where they are, but you gotta do something for me. And the vampire's like, I mean, all right, sure, I'll do something for you.
Twisted shit you pulled that entire game, and I loved every second of it. The Spectre had him go around destroying fetters of other wraiths that he knew about, and he's just destroying them at one point.
Like, he went to face some grandmother's tombstone. He's like, why I have to do this? And the wraith's like, you need to do it because I need that done before I can get this information for you. Remember, buddy? And he's like, all right, fine. Potence crush. And somewhere in the Shadowlands, somebody screams as their feathers get destroyed. So he's doing this, and then we have this issue where everybody backstabs a Harbinger because they're trying to make a deal with Giovanni, and the Giovanni's one stipulation was, we want the Harbinger brought to us alive. And so the would-be bishop of the city went and jumped the Harbinger, and they have him in this van. They're driving down like the expressway, like going like 80 miles an hour in this panel van. And at this point in time, the Harbinger bought that Spectre as like an ally. So the Spectre embodies into the radio of the truck, and it's like, hey, assholes, that's my friend you got there. I want him to be let go, otherwise we're all fucked. And the guy with them,
we're gonna have a problem.
The guy with them was a Khaldun who could see into the Shadowlands because stupid shit Khalduns do, I guess. And
stupid fucking Khaldun.
And he's basically, he's like, you don't command me, spirit. I'll excise you from this place. And the Spectre's like, go fucking try it, man. Like, your life's in my hands right now. And then took over the van. And it's like, so do we have a deal? Do you let him go, or I kill us all? Well, all you anyways. And they're like, no, we don't have a deal. He's like, all right, you know what? It's not him I care about. How about this then? You take him where you gotta go to, do what you need to do. If he dies, he fucking dies. But I want you to do some things for me around town. And Vince's character's like, sure, we'll do it for you, whatever it is. He's like, I just want you to, burn a house, trash a car, things like that. And Vince is like, as adventure entry going, yeah, easiest negotiation ever. And the Spectre's like, fetters, done, done, done. And he goes, all right, cool. Do what you want with the guy. I don't give a shit, but you guys now owe me. Awesome. And the Spectre releases control of the van, and the retainer starts driving it again normally. That's when...
Until the Khaldun opened his mouth again.
That's when the Khaldun said, if you don't obey us, I will destroy you. And the Spectre's like, okay. Re-embodied in the fucking van and drove them headfirst into a semi.
that was an aegis blow down.
That was an aegis for everybody. And and the guy playing the Khaldun was like, I way of win 5. I'm like, cool.
Go blow yourself.
Awesome, buddy. Have fun. But it was just one of those things where, like, I know it's a spirit. He can't do shit. I'm like, he's got an body, man. Like, in habit. Like, you're fucked. Like, he's in a vehicle that's going 8 miles an hour on the expressway. Okay,
it's not hard to fuck up a bunch of vampires in an 80-mile-an-hour driving van. I got to take a quick time out. I'm not going to turn anything off, but I got to run out of the room real quick. I'll be right back.
Sure. So, yeah,
yes,
I definitely...
You are correct, Papa.
I definitely think it's a matter of like how people run, Wraith, especially when they do stuff like that. Because I think interacting with Wraith is awesome. I just think that running Wraith is horribly depressing.
Running it can be horribly depressing. Playing it can be horribly depressing. And unfortunately the onus is on the ST to keep it in the horror realm and out of the depression realm as much as you can.
Yeah,
which is hard to do with that system.
Just like most of the times when you come across Wraith, like Nate said and like Ray said, it's a mechanical thing, or it's like...
Oh, no, I was talking like actually running the game, not like when interacting with other things. That you can do, like, I fucked up a werewolf game doing that.
Yeah, I think that...
I made a Shadow Lord make a deal with Unicorn to handle the ghost of H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, you were the Shadow Lord. You should remember that.
Yeah, I had to go to Black Unicorn for like a year. But...
Yep.
What really gets me about running Wraith, I think Wraith can be a great antagonist splat, especially for stuff like Technocracy or Hunter. Wraith is an awesome little splat, and I think that there's stuff in Wraith itself that's creepy as fuck. Outside of the idea of like soul forging and moliate, you have the death masks, which are kind of cool. You have the idea of Stygia, which gets completely fucked over. The Far Shores, like there's a lot of stuff to play in with Wraith.
Even just the Maelstrom.
Right, the Maelstrom and Spectre's obviously your shadow. I think Wraith is so hard to play and do well with it is because you have to almost have 2 people for every Wraith. Somebody's got to play the shadow, somebody's got to play the actual Wraith.
Which can become exceedingly unwieldy when you're trying to run it.
Yeah, I mean, you can do like a 2-person game with 4 players. Well, a 2-character game with 4 players, essentially. But then it's like, how often does a Spectre actually get to come into control? And then does that player even having fun right now? Or are they bored,
Right.
And I think that you can relegate it into almost like a Poe territory when you're running KOE, the Hunt and the Poe. So when the Poe takes over, you just kind of like have the player and trust them to what's going on. But again, you got to have the right players because some players will take the ability to run their dark side and their good side as kind of like a carte blanche to where the fuck they want and not pay consequences, right? So that's a problem. Which is why I think Wraith is kind of tricky, in general to run.
But in Wraith, when it comes down to it, really is a game of consequences.
Yeah.
Like, when it comes down to it. Especially when you deal with the guilds and those that are in charge or have more power than you.
Yeah.
In an Acropolis or even out in the wilds.
But I think that can be said at just about any setting in the World of Darkness, to be honest, because you have consequences that manifest in different, ways for just about everybody. You have Worm Taint for Garou, you have Humanity and Path ratings for Vampire, you have your Torment for Demons. Like, there's a lot of ways to play the consequence part of the World of Darkness, but I think that there's a lot more like creep factor involved in Wraith, but to get to it you have to kind of digest all the stuff that's really horrifically depressing about the system, which is why I think go ahead.
The onus kind of falls on both the ST and the player at that point, because even if I, the player, haven't read as much as the ST or whatever, it's on me to act the role and to fall into that, to to allow myself to try to feel that fear to role play it correctly.
Right.
Just
Right.
as it's on you to explain it to me, to to flesh the world out for me. So
Right.
it comes down to that, I guess.
We have a question
You-
from Chris in chat. It says, "How well can a game be run with one person playing the Wraith, another playing the Spectre? Well, the Shadow actually. You can do it.
I'd say, yeah,
but
the Spectre is just the
it's the
evolved form of the
yeah,
Wraith,
well, it's
effectively.
when the
is
Shadow
taking
takes over.
entirely.
Right.
But you could do that. But my issue with that is like, you have to keep them both engaged. Otherwise, one person's going to be sitting out a game like 3/4 of the time. I mean, they're supposed to be whispering shit to the person playing the Wraith's like conscious
Yeah.
Right.
mind, right? But you know,
That
you're
becomes really
That go
difficult
before
to
it
do.
interrupts the story or interrupts roleplay because
Yeah.
I'm constantly talking to Nate to try and get him to give in to me his shadow. Is that
well
how
for
much is that coming?
for me though. This is all theoretical because I've never actually run it. So
Same here.
I've
Played it.
played it and I've run it as a subset of another game, but I've never run Wraith by itself. So
I'd say when I ran Wraith, I didn't have a second person being their shadows. Usually, when they were sitting down to do an RP scene with somebody else, I was the shadow. Just walking behind them and whispering horrible shit they should be doing, or, don't you remember this person stabbed you in the back? And,
I just
and
call that
bringing up
Malkavian
that shit.
101.
I mean, to be fair, I have those conversations with myself regularly when I'm playing a Malkavian, but
yeah,
Play one in my game.
I'll have fun playing one in your game. You'll enforce Malkavian madness, and I'll be happy about it.
so
Oh, there you go.
speaking of that vampire connection, there are things in Vampire that I think are creepy as fuck, and I love the hell out of the setting for it. Classical World of Darkness, right? So like V20 type stuff. And for one, I think Zamisi are
Cathedral of Flesh.
Zamisi are top of the line for me on that because you have
I'm still here.
okay
He's just eating.
I'm eating. I don't want to eat. Like,
on
turn
camera.
this into a mukbang.
Some people like that, Nate.
I mean, you could.
Agree.
This could easily become a roundtable mukbang.
No, I already ate.
So
All right,
So,
so
but
the Zamis very creepy.
yeah.
The creepy shit about just the clan in general to bring in. And the other thing, if you do it right, Giovanni should be fucking scary.
Oh,
Well,
they should be absolutely terrifying.
I
There's
think-
no if you do it right. They should just be scary.
I think that Zamisi take the cake on that one because you have
Oh,
the
yeah.
like they are body horror personified, right? There's that. Has anybody here seen Society?
I have.
Yeah,
don't think so.
Society
I've seen the
is like
Society.
a weird ass Zamisi movie. If you watch the
Yeah.
ending of it, it's
If you haven't seen it, just watch the kill count. James A. Janice
Yeah.
does a great job.
Dead Meat does a thing on Society, and it kind of gets into the good part of like why that's such a weird, fucking creepy
yeah.
ass film.
And it is a weird. I mean, Reanimator's another one that could very well be seen as a me sort of deal.
I view Reanimator as Biothon.
I mean, Biothom, yeah, but Biothom doesn't usually have those consequences.
Well, I mean, you could.
Try dealing with a cadre of children following you. Oh, their eyes and ears and mouths are sewn shut. I've done that before in a Wraith game. I
Right.
did that before in a werewolf game, too.
Well, you can do it almost any
That was
game.
fun.
But I think that Zamisi, it makes it kind of like almost expected to have creepy kids in a castle. I mean, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
why wouldn't you?
Whether or not they're part of the walls is, neither here nor there.
But Zamisi for me is a double-edged sword because as much as they're wonderfully horrifying and they're great villains and they're great for creep factor, they're also one of the easiest to cross that idea of consent that we talked about in terms of like
Yeah.
how horrific you get with their descriptions. They're a
God
clan
knows
that's
I've done that.
super easy to go overboard with and to do it gleefully almost because I really enjoy that clan. They're one of my favorite clans. Actually, the more I've played them, the more I've really, really, really liked playing them.
Yeah,
Well,
me
once
too.
you get into their politics and stuff, it almost normalizes them insofar as something that can warp your very flesh and bones can be normalized.
Yeah, it's fun. I think that Cathedral of Flesh is an awesome like just a setting piece that's a lot of fun. And the whole idea of the crumbling Romanian estate, like, old castles and like rotting mansions that really kind of embody a lot of that the old school Zamisi like mystique. Those are great things to put into a horror game. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
like my game this Halloween was going to be in the Dark Ages, and people are going to play neonates that are trapped in a Zamisi's castle because your sires sold you away to the Zamisi for favors, and you have to make it out alive. it was going to be
could've been a lot of
just a
fun.
cavalcade of horrors, and I was looking forward to running it, and just the idea of like, I want to run a vampire game, but how am I going to make it creepy? And immediately Zamisi, top of my list, right off the bat.
I agree.
I mean,
know-
another fun one you can do a lot of creepy shit with is La Sombra.
Yeah,
And they literally play on one of the most primordial fears humans have.
yeah, but so
And then on top of it, we've all seen enough hentai to know where it's going.
well, not even that. But for me, La Sombra runs the same issue that Wraith has. People have dumbed down the impact of their powers into nothing but mechanics.
But mechanics.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm in Shroud of
It's
Night.
the stupidest shit.
I know it does this, so I'm not sweating it. I got Eyes of Beast, Heightened Senses. I'm fine. It's like, all right, cool. Thanks for playing, guys. You know.
We ran a game actually, Ray, years ago, where we brought that more to the fore with La Sombra. When you brought, oh man, I don't remember what I called him, the shadow being, when you tried to summon Shroud or something, that you were giving basically sentience to.
Oh yeah,
Oblivion.
yeah. Because I had Abyss mysticism.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Abyss Mysticism word.
Well, that's a thing you can play with regular
Oh yeah, for
La
sure.
Sombra, as opposed to just the Abyssal Mystics. Because, like,
Yeah,
Should.
the Abyss is still the Abyss. Like, the Abyss is the Abyss is the Abyss is the Abyss. There is no getting around that.
right.
It's what's in the Abyss you need to be worried about. Sure, I'm going to summon Shroud of Night. What's in there?
Yeah, but then we have games that, for example, have a great potential for horror, and then just the game itself defeats that purpose. And I think
Yeah.
for me, a big one for that is Mage.
Yeah.
Mage has the potential to be incredibly fucking terrifying because you're literally dealing with immutable reality, and anything you can imagine can exist. But then it's like, yeah, but I can warp reality right back, so I don't give a shit. You know, and
Yeah.
unless you. Uh-oh.
No, I was just gonna jump on there and
Yeah.
say, like, do you think Mage was designed to be a horror game though?
No, I think Mage was designed
No,
to be
it-
a game where it's like where fantasy rules.
Right.
But I
That
think,
was, that was supposed to be a game of personal discovery, wasn't it? As
well,
opposed to
I mean,
personal horror?
ascension and enlightenment. But the thing is, though, when dealing with stuff in Mage, those ideas, you could make a really creepy game about it. But the problem is, the powers of the mages themselves kind of defeat that.
Right.
You know, they deflate
Yeah.
it.
Same weapon being used, basically.
Yeah, it's weird because I've done a lot of creepy stuff with Mage. I've had a lot of fun with Mage and doing creepy stuff with Mage. But bottom line, what it always comes down to is the players going, well, what spheres do I need to beat the thing? And that's just the conversation. It's
Right.
not about, you know, oh my god, this thing emerged out of liquid darkness and formed into this weird synthetic looking body that's like glowing eyes and dripping, you know, shadowy liquid from its maw. So I'm gonna use some prime and forces to make sunlight and try that. You know, that's my blip done. Come
I
on,
want
man.
to talk about games that are like almost tailor made for horror, but mostly people just don't even bother putting it in that direction. Fucking Dungeons and Dragons. Like
Oh yeah.
there is no part of Dungeons and
Ravenloft.
Dragons. Right. Well, okay, so Ravenloft, but let's
No, I'm
just
just saying, like,
rem-
in general, most people
Right,
make
just-
it the, like, kick in the door or loot the room when
Right.
it should be, this is not good.
you like you
There's no
have
good here.
creatures, you have like entities, monsters that are pure evil. Like, what about that isn't horrific? You know what I mean? Like, there are so many opportunities to tell a creepy, suspenseful, terrifying tale in Dungeons and Dragons, and you know, so many people just go, "Well, what's my initiative? I'm going to smash it with this hammer." Like,
Yeah.
I get
No,
it, but
Sure.
like,
We ran a D&D game actually once. I think the only time I've ever seen you even fuck with D&D.
yeah, Yeah.
And I was playing a priest, and that was some creepy shit because we came across some fucked up, basically an old evil god that everyone thought was dead was fucking not.
Well, Nate's got the
That
new
shit.
player's handbook now that he's been reading.
hmm
So that's
Yes.
the thing.
Yes, I have been reading. In fact,
The Curse of Strahd was a good segue into horror again. Like, they brought this idea of Barovia being horrific and Ravenloft being this like really fucking insane and bad place to be back to the forefront, I think, with Curse of Strahd, because they talk about the very essence of this place is horrible. So most of the Barovians you meet, well, a lot of the Barovians you meet actually won't have actual souls. They're just dead shells walking around. And those souls that are, you know, in bodies, when they die, they just get reincarnated by Strahd. they're just stuck in a cycle of living life after life after life out because it muses Strahd, because Strahd deals with the darkness there, and it's just this really interesting story to progress through, and you deal with all this old school like Victorian England feeling like horror in Curse of Strahd, but then you get into so I roll initiative and my monk's gonna do Sunstrike on the thing and kill it, or I'm casting Moonlight, so fuck all the werewolves, and you're like, well, it had potential, but then we fucked it all up.
I know where the Moonlight thing came from.
Yeah,
I was there for that.
Fuck Moonlight and fuck Thorns, all right? So, two of the most...
Well, also fuck Sanctuary and Spiritual Weapons.
Stupid
so.
fucking spells. Yeah, so you have to really, to maintain horror in D&D, you have to really control like what's going on from a storyteller perspective. And it, for me, it's almost like plot hammering, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because you have to babysit your players and say, yeah, no, I know your thing says this, but here's how it works this time around, and to maintain the level of horror. So
It's interesting that the game has that, like, because it's not like a storytelling game primarily, it is an adventuring game primarily, wherein you make characters and hopefully tell stories. It's not focused on that characterization. It's focused on, like, what is your role? What's your role in the party? And, you know, are you going to go adventure? Are you going to go loot? Are you going to go get in combat? How do we do that? So it's like, as there is evil, there was also the opposition to that, which is your strategic purpose. So it's very hard to be like, we're going to do a horror story, guys, because they're like, but my job is to fuck the evil up. Like,
right. We got a
what I
paladin
do.
and a cleric. Like, that's how this works, right?
Like, shit, I'll just cast magic missile at the darkness. I fucking win. I don't care.
Yeah. It's,
That's not always a joke.
Done
Done it
yeah.
a few
it's not.
times.
Seen it happen multiple times.
Yeah. You caused me to do it at least twice when I was playing my sorcerer.
Yes.
But yeah, I think if you have the right group, you know, if you have a group of people that are more minded towards story and less towards stat, you can run a pretty compelling horror story. And also, if you're like me and you just fuck the rules, you know, if you just kind of go, it doesn't work that way, it's gonna work this way, you know, you can do things. You know, if you
Rule of cool has its place.
Well, so yeah, but I think that can be said for just about any game. Like, you need to have a group that's coming into it with that idea of, like, we're going to play a horror story game, not we're going to play let's get the loot and kill the monster game. I mean, you can have the kill the monster, but primarily let's do the story stuff. And I think that can be done in D&D. It just takes more effort. Some systems and some games are more geared towards that, right? So
do you know the best way I've found to create a horror element in D&D is just put a monster in front of your players that's way above their challenge rating.
Ray does that regularly.
Right.
Oh yeah.
when the Wests of the group go, no, we shouldn't be fighting this.
yeah.
That thing? Nah. Nah, fam.
Yeah, the challenge rating stuff for D&D regularly tells me I'm being a dick to my players. I ignore
Yes,
it.
And we don't know until
And keep
afterwards
going.
usually, and he's like, this guy here just told me I was a dick for throwing that at you.
I mean, admittedly, that's also happened in L5R a few times, which you can also do some horrifying shit in L5R.
So L5R,
Wow.
Some of the shit I was reading in the book, it was like, whoa.
right? L5R is an interesting one because horror should be inherent in that game. Because you have the Shadowlands Taint, you have the Oni, you have like Maho users, you have all this crazy shit.
A bunch of bad shit.
But it doesn't get touched on a lot. And I purposely, in the games I'm running right now, have steered away from it because I don't want to. That's not the theme I'm going for. So I just haven't dealt with it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to be done there. And speaking of Asian influenced, well, I mean, yeah, but it wasn't really. That was more of a discovery and like, how long do you guys want to stay and what do you want to risk to get the stuff you want to get out of this castle type thing. You know, it wasn't really horror in my mind. That was, we got gear, we'll travel, you know, that's how I looked at it.
Admittedly, sometimes.
We got a statement here. I heard a story about a DM who had players not taking the horror seriously in a Call of Cthulhu game. They played like murder hobos, so in time he told them they were fighting spiders. Then the players started making fun of the spiders. Then the ST dumped a live tarantula from a box on the table. So
I would have killed that ST. That ST would be dead.
that's crossing the line hardcore and what I call fuck no consent.
Yeah,
But
I'd say
what
that
I would have
consent line
done
Sounds like
gone.
that sounds like Nordic LARP.
Nordic, bah, that's scary. So what I would have done in that case, if players around my table were being murder hobos, and I would have put monsters in their way, and once they started killing them, I would reveal that they're not actually monsters; they're killing normal people.
Yep.
Right.
That's a good. That I've done that shit
Something
before.
was playing a thing in their head, and
Yep.
they just saw normal people as terrible monsters.
And
that
it puts
had been
some weird sort of
responding.
eldritch parasite at the base of their necks that's been altering their perceptions.
Right.
I did that in a
horrifying.
werewolf game at one point. Ray was around for that.
Yeah, you could do that, and that would be a sure way to go, oh, maybe we shouldn't murder hobo everything. Well, you can. Or here's the other thing. You guys kill lots amount of people. You helped in the ritual sacrifice, and now the world ends. Have a day. Nothing wrong with that. But bringing things back to a Asian influence game, Kindred of the East is a game that has next to no horror in it. Should be horror, because some of their powers are...
10,000 hells.
It's not like you travel there. Like in it, if you went to Yomi a lot of the time, sure. If the game was about traveling to Yomi and the different like kings of hell and their realms, sure. But it's not. If you go to Yomi, you're either incredibly powerful and can take it anyways, or you're really stupid and you're gonna die. So really, Yomi doesn't play in except for a place where you came from that was really, really horrible that one time when you died.
To answer your question, Boobel, yes, we have heard of Dread, and we actually both know someone who wrote it.
Yeah, heard about it. But for me, KOE has always had this manga anime action feel. And that bothered me because it was heavily influenced by the fact that they had a lot of like manga style art in the books. So people are like, oh, it's just Kung Fu vampires. Like you guys just ruined, like you...
An entire system.
Well, a lot of the art was done all right, like the rest of the World of Darkness books, but some of the more like, when they're telling examples and through the story, it's almost always anime or manga style. And then like the comics in front of each Dharma book are anime manga style.
Yep.
But it's funny because if you look at that in like contrast to the way they wrote some of the powers are freaking terrifying. Like, you have a tattoo, you can detach it from your arm and have it go after somebody. Like, what the fuck is that all about? You can attach your arm, your heads, your limbs, like all kinds of crazy shit. But then...
Sometimes you're literally a walking corpse if you go in the sun.
Right, but then it's like super, hardcore anime, weeaboo shit. And it's like, well, we just ruined everything that could be horrific by this game. And that's what bothers me about some of the World of Darkness games. Like, it's built on this rotting world, essentially. And some of these games just kind of don't get off in that stop, and they keep going on to Ass Kickville or Cartoonville, and it gets almost to be like a parody of itself.
Fluffyville?
Well, yeah, not really super fluffy, but like Demon.
Changeling.
Oh yeah, fuck Change.
Super Fluffyville.
Changeling could be such a good fucking system if people didn't treat it like
Not the
fucking...
Lost. Actually, not the Dreaming. The Dreaming is shit, for lack of, in my
Fluffy
opinion.
Bunnyville. Somebody actually asked us about Lost back up here somewhere. Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
Demon Hunter
Chris did, I
X.
think.
I've heard
Yeah,
Changeling
it
the
was
Lost
Papa.
is pretty badass.
Changing the
It's
Lost
all
is
Sad.
good.
From what little I read, Changing the Lost looks like it can have a creep factor, especially if they know you escaped. Yes.
Changeling the Lost.
We did briefly play in a Lost game.
Changing the Lost is a creepy game. Like, the books do a very good job of getting that across. Changing the Dreaming, though, is just... I can't
Way
say
too
anything
often
good
it
about
turns
it.
into fantasy, fairy tale fun time.
I can't even describe how much I don't like Changing the Dreaming. And it's sad, because I have friends who really love that system. I'm like, why? I get that's their taste, and that's awesome, but I really can't get into Changing the Dreaming. Changing the Lost is creepy.
I never really got into Changeling the Dreaming until it came to the Dark Carnival and the Midnight Circus, because I had to read it for mechanics and kind of understand where a start was coming from. But that's a certain module that took the horror and ramped it to 11.
Right. And Chris asked about Demon Hunter X. Demon Hunter X is just an anime hunter game.
I'd say I know nothing of that. So
Yeah.
It's almost all anime.
It's
It's leaning into the Demon Hunter X definitely just like leans into the anime swords and katanas and martial. It's
SF0.
yeah. Strike Force Zero.
I
is
actually had
nuts.
I actually had a conversation similar along these lines not too long ago, and something that has occurred to me very recently. And I don't know what this says about my lack of observation skills, but there are 1,000 different ways to interpret any one game. And I think a lot of it originates from what got people into that particular game in the first place. And where I've experienced this is D&D. This is the thing that's, just kind of like present in my focus recently. And the place where I come from like, a gritty fantasy magic, like if I'm going to get into high fantasy, like it's scary. There's dragons, they kill you. It's like gritty warriors and gritty mages, and they're traveling around and trying to like stop plagues of zombies and undead skeletons. And it's just a reflection of where I got into high fantasy.
Mhm.
And at the same time, you have, my experiences with a younger generation, people that are in their, mid to early 20s, and they're experiencing fantasy from like an anime perspective. They like it's still swords and sorcery, but it's a little silly and it's a little goofy, and there's a lot of time spent on things that aren't particularly important to the story and aren't particularly suspenseful. They're just kind of cutesy. And it's just like neither of us are wrong, like people get into anime and they want to play Kindred of the East because they think that's what it is. And then there's other people who have like a very different perspective on that. It's just you can't control how people see it.
Yeah.
And that kind of sucks.
Like I like KOE. Like Devil Tigers, love them. Favorite Dharma, hands down.
I would love to get
Bone
a
Flowers
chance
are
to
great.
play a KOE someday, because that would be a lot of fun. You're a soul that crawled out of hell, literally.
I played 1K for about 3 sessions, and it was cool. We just didn't get to do anything because it was only 3 sessions long.
Yeah.
I do own every one of the books, so if ever there's an opportunity, I'd be interested in playing as well.
Fair enough.
I still have all of them on PDF. I'm willing to reread them.
I stocked up for a podcast or something.
I may actually be getting some here in the next week. So
That being said, I think it's funny that we are definitely hardcore gravitating a lot more towards like old World of Darkness or classical World of Darkness stuff here, because I think when thinking about it, for most of the time, like when somebody goes World of Darkness, my default is like V20 line, M20 line, etc. But I think that there's stuff to be said for the new WoD line of Chronicles. So Changing the Lost is one that's really, really creepy and really, really well done from a horror perspective.
Geist is a nice re-up to what Wraith could have been.
So Geist for me is a weird amalgamation of Wraith and Demon.
Yeah.
Because you're a person that died, but you made a deal with a very, very powerful Wraith that has brought you back and now has joined with your psyche on one level or another. So Geist for me is can be good. I think the art for it was really, really cool and kind of set a good tone. But I think where Onyx kind of stumbled over themselves with a lot of the New World of Darkness stuff is making their power systems way too complex. So in Geist you have keys, right? And you have to assemble these keys to do unlock some other thing. And it's completely left to the storyteller what those keys actually are. And then like in Demon the Descent, which was supremely disappointing to me because I was hoping for a really awesome like follow-up to Demon the Fallen, and it turned out that you're playing rogue programs from the Matrix and the God Emperor.
Fuck that game and every fucking game that looks like it.
So I want to try to.
I was wondering what that
but
looks
see,
like.
here's the thing though. Like I'm in your same boat with this game though, Nate. I don't like the way it was written, but I want to try to find some way to redeem that game, right? So I actually want to run
Just
it.
call it the Matrix because that's what it is.
Right, but then in that book you have
Matrix,
ciphers
the fucking
that decode into some other revelation or like in exploit you get if you get the right combination, and you make up the combination with your storytellers. Like, guys, just stop. This system is not good for interpretive mechanics. Like the one that you built is not good for interpretive mechanics. Just please stop trying to make the mechanics that interpretive. Stop trying to make it this like it could be anything thing. Like Onyx Path, get off the pot here. Like you're just shitting your brains out. Stop.
stop making fetch happen. Fetch is never going to happen.
Not with the system they have. It doesn't. Interpretive dice don't work with the way the core mechanic is written, in my opinion, because everything else is concrete. Every other setting has concrete powers. Here's how they work. And then all of a sudden, hey guys, what do you want it to be? We don't know, so make something up. It's like fucking A. Come on, man. Especially if you're combining splats, because hey Rose, in New WoD you can combine splats without that big of an issue, right? Like nobody's at war with one another really, so you can do that weird, not necessarily super fronts, but you can have like other creature types involved in it where it's not gonna be like, oh, if I see one they're gonna kill me, But demon is just a weird odd duckling because it takes, for what I felt was a one-off idea with a god machine, like, oh yeah, the god machine mentioned in first edition, just kind of like a thing that was thrown away, and then it becomes centered around that entire thing for the entire Chronicles of Darkness. God machine Chronicles.
Yeah, like duckling that turned into a turtle.
I'm surprised they brought that back because White Wolf, after they put it out the first time, and it basically, in the first head where it kind of hit a brick wall and they took it away, they made a whole different game called Engel, which was completely around the god machine, and basically you were factions of angels, kind of like Demon of the Fallen, I guess, but it wasn't attached to World of Darkness. And I thought they would have left it there. I didn't know they were going to bring it back all crazy.
Well, what's irritating about the god machine stuff is that you can do this awesome like eldritch mechanical being type thing, or auto Cathonica, from Mage and World of Darkness for like Technocracy, Iteration X type shit, and do this weird Cthulhu-esque machine that's behind the scenes of the world, just peeking through the skein of reality. You can do that, but it's one of those things again where it's like, and this is a thing that Onyx keeps on falling into, in my opinion. They keep on falling into this trap where they don't want to nail anything down. Like they don't want to give you a definitive answer at anything, so they just leave it up to it's entirely your interpretation. Here's it could be all of these things, or it could be none of them. You make it what you want it to be, and you're like, just give me a fucking answer. Again, players and storytellers are going to make their own canon, what they want to have in their game, what they don't want to have in their game. So just give us the canon answer. Stop doing this like, well, it can be anything response.
Right.
It's annoying.
It's a cop-out.
They took what they did with Gehenna and applied it to different areas of the world. It was like, don't do that.
They've been doing that bullshit since the beginning of the World of Darkness, the original World of Darkness. Like they say it's this, and then they're like, "But is it?" Like, whatever.
Yeah. Give me a fucking canon and let's just play with that. It's God Machine is just so like they don't give you an answer at all about what the fuck it is at all, or why it's even there. That's the most frustrating thing. So when you read Demon of the Descent, and you're like, I'm gonna run this really kind of weird techno agnostic, espionage game where we're really Matrix but we're not. Right. We need to stop this God Machine installation from going. Okay, what's it doing? We don't know. What does the book say it's doing? It doesn't know either. It's whatever you want it to do. Like, but what does it do? Like, what's the impetus?
It's between your ideas.
Essentially,
it's in the very fabric of your brain.
There's an entire warehouse between the 13th and 14th floor and it exists in subspace. Cool, but what's it doing? I don't know. What's the impetus? Like, what's the impetus for action? There's no call to action inherent in that game at all.
It's a machine.
Right, it's the God Machine. Okay.
Don't let anybody know you're there.
Oh, thank you for the host, Ash. Appreciate it, man. It's one of those things where it's like you could write it to be creepy. You can write this awesome, like, eldritch, horrific machine type thing, but the amount of work you'd have to put in to do that, I might as well run Call of Cthulhu. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, at that point in time, you might as well.
There should be a game about designing games.
Writer, the eternal headache.
There is. It's called GURPS.
Yeah, it's called Submit to Storyteller Vault and Wait.
Yeah.
So here's a question. What about Cult? Has anyone here played Cult?
I want to play
it.
I've heard Cult, but I have not played it.
Well, then that should be on the agenda because I have also read that rule book top to back. I don't know how to run it, but I can figure it out. But apparently, it is a definitely like horror along the lines of you exist in a world where just beyond your ability to perceive are like terrible. It basically it's like one part Dark City and one part Hellraiser.
Okay.
And
That could be fun.
yeah, it's It is it's a different rule set I've never used before. It's not like anyone I've ever played before. But it's definitely fucked up, and it definitely has like the body horror elements. It has like the psychological horror elements, and yeah. So and it's Swedish, so it's edgy.
The very edgiest.
We've learned from
Yes.
Paradox, if nothing else.
Yes.
A lot of
It will
edge
be
coming
edgy.
from the Nordic states.
Yes.
That's funny. Oh, not new WAD, for V5. Does it seem scarier than old, like V20? Does anybody think?
So
Kind of, but not
I
really.
like to think it is because of the mechanics, like the blood mechanic. It's not a pool of your points anymore. This is
Yeah.
like I that's why I love playing any of the vampire iterations. All about that personal horror. You have to, as a player, you have to get into that. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything for you. So
I
just
want
the
to.
fact that it's not a pool anymore. It's not a
Hunger
I just
dice,
need
yeah.
to stay stocked up. This is a inevitability that I got to try and stave off.
Right.
And
Hunger.
I think that do it. So I like it.
Yeah, that stuff was interesting, but you still run into a point, as I've noticed running it, where it's almost still like blood points, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hunger, like you're staving it off. It's run differently, I agree, and it's not always reliable that you can like stave off hunger or that you will fall to hunger. So I like that unpredictability of it, but as a setting, I don't know. But I saw Nate, you had a reaction differently when I said V5. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think that it really depends on what book you're working with out of that. I think that if you're playing strictly vampire to vampire to vampire, I think that those ingrained rules can make for a more uniquely terrifying experience as a vampire. But I think that the world that is the world of darkness in the 5th edition, I think they have made great efforts in the writing to make it seem more scary and they're not quite sure what's going on. However, I feel like in doing that, they've made it a much less reliable and consistent world. And I feel like the impressions I get from setting book to setting book to setting book
That's true.
are not necessarily consistent. And so I don't think that they've made the world of darkness more scary. I think that they've made what vampires are much less significant. And I feel like that is detrimental to the setting of World of Darkness. I feel like part of the draw of what Vampire the Masquerade is that yes, at your core, you are playing a villainous creature, but it is your drive to maintain the semblance of humanity in a world going mad. When you take all of that away, when you take the stark, when your core game is a Camarilla game, and you take away the enemy, the stark opposite of what you are trying to maintain, which is like the Sabbat, which is these inhumane aspects of vampirism, it lessens the overall horror that you experience personally. And I think that taking what storytellers should have been doing in the first place, which is helping you to feed and making your consumption of blood more realistic and more meaningful, I don't think that making those rules really does anything for storytelling. It just puts rules to things you should have already been including in your strategies as a storyteller.
Sure.
So
That's fair.
I feel that modern technology makes our world much smaller and it makes our world much less frightening. Because if there's a camera on every corner, like now you're playing a different type of personal horror. Now you're like, oh, I got to stay away from the light.
Right. And
Right,
That's,
fair
that's not the same game.
Yeah, and I think that they definitely made V5 more about this Hunter's Hunted aspect with the Second Inquisition, etc. I do
Yeah.
have an issue as well with the Sabbat being gone, but it's clear in some of the supplements they've tried to replace that physical presence of Sabbat, that physical threat, with a spiritual threat of like the Church of Cain and the Bahari and the Cultivar. And it's like, that's cool, but
The only real threat there at that point is the cultivar.
well, not even really. Like you're it felt like they're trying to make it to where these religious occult groups would be more significant and would cause more strife, but then none of the books pick that up. Nobody runs with it, you know. In New Wadrid Requiem,
the boogeyman they replaced the Sabbat with is the Second Inquisition.
but it's not even. It's not even on the same scale though. Like
No, it's not.
It's like Nate's saying. Like it's not that dark reflection of where you are and what you believe in. Now it's just humans hunting you down. It's like, you know, in all honesty, can you blame them? I mean,
No.
you know, but
And that's why it's less,
No,
not so much less scary, but less poignant, impactful. There we go. There's the word. Thank you, Jeff.
well, I think that also isn't helped by the fact that when you read the books, like core book, you read, you get one idea of the setting. Then you read the Anarch book, you're like, okay, so that's another idea of the setting. Then you get the Cam book, and it's different, a little bit different, not that far. I mean, they're kind of on the same page, but just different enough to be like kind of weirdly noticeable. And then you get Chicago by Night, which completely goes off a different direction. Like,
Different.
Chicago by Night is a very consistent update to the V20 system. To me.
I think Chicago by Night is a phenomenal V20 supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think all of the Onyx Path stuff is very consistent with what Onyx Path was making for the 20th anniversary edition.
Yeah.
I feel like they've taken Beckett's Jihad Diary, they've taken, you know, all the Dread names and all the other stuff that they've published, and they've gradually updated. And you can tell it even by their art style. You can tell it by, you know, the layout of the books.
Yeah.
Whereas the stuff that was made by White Wolf before they were reabsorbed by Paradox, and the stuff made by what's come after, which is Modiphius, they definitely have that like photographic, Photoshoppy, and to me, it's focus on something. Like there's a lot of focus on Thin Bloods. There's a lot of focus on the Caitiff and sort of like these higher generations. And those are always the things that I thought were the least interesting aspects of the game.
Yeah.
And I don't find them to be particularly terrifying. I don't find them to be like, to me, if I'm just a person who occasionally feels discomfort if I'm awake during the day and I can do trash can magic, what's the horror in that? Like what and there's so many of us that like the main foundational elements of vampiric society are just kind of like, we can't do nothing about it. Like, why is that interesting from a horror perspective? That's, to me, that's just like,
Right.
I just don't care.
And one of my concerns right now is that Werewolf 5th edition W5 got put off to a completely different company. So we're going to see even, in my opinion, an even larger disconnect when that book comes out. So, like, are we even going to have anything resembling this old World of Darkness that we're used to in terms of, like, the interconnectivity between the splats? I don't think it's going to be there. I think it's going to be just tertiary, you know, like a vestigial connection, you know, as the new things are come out and put out. I think stuff by Onyx will be more unified than that Onyx Path way, if that makes sense. But I think the companies that are doing like Werewolf that aren't connected to that are going to be out of the loop, so to speak, on like any sort of internal discussion, like what direction we want to take with the line as a whole. And I think we're going to see some issues.
I think that the truth of it is going to be what comes down to what Paradox wants. Right? Paradox is the license holder, and they're going to go, this is what we want. This is our image. This is our image for what this license should be. And if Paradox chooses to say, incorporate these elements, I'm more curious to see how the rules translate and less about how they update the setting for Werewolf, because you know, at least in earlier iterations of the World of Darkness, at least the rules were fairly consistent. You know, that like, you know, to make a dice pool, it's the same for Werewolf, for Wraith, for Mage, whatever. How is that going to translate to Werewolf? Because they really didn't make a new rule set for the World of Darkness. They made a new rule set for Vampire.
Right.
So is there going to be a lack of consistency there? Because really what people want is they want to be able to, of course, play the game, but they want to be able to incorporate those other games into theirs, whether it's, you know, player versus player or just as enemies for your player characters. And if it's a completely different rule set, I don't do that.
What they'll probably do is they did this for a bit in like, especially if you look at the LARP books for like Mage, etc. Like, hey, if you want to have this type of creature type in your game, here's an amalgamation for the type of powers they have, but using the system for the game that you're running. And that's why I see them doing. Like, werewolves will have an amalgamation of, celerity and some potence and some, protean. And then on the other side for werewolf, yeah, vampires have this type of, like these types of gifts that are mimicked by their powers. That's really the only way I see them doing it, is such a huge mechanical divide between them. So, I mean, we've seen them do it before. I don't see why they would do it any differently this time around. But the core system, though, for people who want to have that, like, no, I want to have a werewolf in my game, not just they use these types of powers. I want to actually incorporate what they have in that book. That is where we'll probably see a problem. Because
and it can cause a problem.
Well, yeah, because when you started seeing people bring like werewolf stuff over to vampire, it's like, yeah, I made a Cleoth out of the werewolf book, and you're a pack of Sabbat, and I just murdered all of you with a Cleoth. Whoops.
That's a horror game.
Right, there you go. We're going to grandmother's house from the old Time of Thin Blood stuff.
It's okay. I've had that happen.
That's a different kind of horror.
I've had people in my own pack kill off my entire pack, so it's all good. Both in Sabbat and in werewolf games.
Yeah, werewolf.
Seen that happen.
I think it's harder to do horror in werewolf for me because you're just engines of destruction. Yeah, you're a giant rage monster. Excuse me, don't even give me that face. You're a giant fucking rage monster as a group. You have a thing called rage, and it fuels you to make you a combatant from hell. You also have Krynos, which gives you stupid fucking bonuses for physical abilities, and gifts that make you ungodly. So don't give me it makes it less horrible. It does make it less horrible, because those mundane difficulties you want to throw at somebody that can make a situation uncomfortable or scary, players walk through it because they have tons of shit on their sheet that says, I win.
So, you know that old adage about how you should be afraid of 5 regular guys with shotguns in Vampire? It's 3 in Werewolf.
Yeah, okay. So, I know you want to throw magical powers in there, but I'm talking about without that shit.
I'm not saying with magic powers. I have murdered an entire werewolf pack with 3 officers with shotguns.
Okay, let's get this on a more realistic scale, though. How often does a storyteller do that?
Okay, are we talking about other STs or are we talking about us?
Not us, like in general, like the game as a general.
LARP or was it tabletop?
It was LARP.
Yeah, well, that's a different story,
why.
too.
That's why. It was rock, paper, scissors. That's... a dice to dice, you can give me a dozen cops with shotguns. I need 1 werewolf, rank 1. I will murder the precinct and no one will be the wiser.
So Russ says the horror lies in dealing with the repercussions of dealing with said rage. But does it,
There's
though?
that too.
But does it, though?
Spend too much of it, you can go into worm thrall.
Sure, if you spend enough rage, but the problem is, I've seen
ST
maybe
done it for
one time a storyteller said, you're doing some heinous shit. Let's have a chat about the worm. Like, I've never seen it happen on a regular basis when people are like, I'm just going to go murder hobo and blow all this guy's rage because I'm going to get a Fenris R rune and I kick ass. We need to talk about some shit, son. Like, you need to pump the brakes a little bit. Thrall the worm is a thing, but I never see it used.
I'd say, unfortunately, that is a problem with a lot of STs, is they either don't know about it, don't care about it, or don't want to deal with whatever player bitching comes afterwards.
It comes back to that interpretation piece we were talking about earlier. Oftentimes players interpret werewolf as like a game of rock'em sock'em robots, right? It's. I mean, people view Vampire the Masquerade as like you're an undead superhero. That's not what it's intended to be.
Yeah.
Same thing with werewolf. To me, the horror of werewolf can be found in the simple fact that no matter how powerful you think you are as a werewolf, no matter how much rage and claws and death you can deal, you cannot stop the worm. No matter what you do, it's everywhere. It's in all places. It's at the doctor's office. It's at the grocery store. It's at a restaurant, and it's slowly creeping, and it's
up
going
the street.
Right.
It might be in your system if you just got a flu shot,
or if you just ate from O'Toole's.
Right, but
like there's all sorts of different shit.
But those are the types of things I never see played up. Like whenever I've gone to a ton of group games, especially at like conventions, even playing a kinfolk, where I'm like, I'm expecting to be scared out my fucking mind. I'm playing an arrogant, super full of myself, fucking get a Fenris kinfolk with a shotgun and awaken guns. And I'm like, all right, I should be scared. And all the other Guru are like, nah, you're coming to the Umbra to fight the bad things with us, the Bane Tender Bane. I'm like, okay, I guess.
Meanwhile, I was playing the one sane
And then
werewolf
it's-
that went, no, you shouldn't do this.
But then it's like, oh, here's all these gifts that we're going to stack on you so you're invulnerable. And that's what I saw a lot, especially in org play. Live action wise, it's all about gift stacking. Might of Thor gives you this, and then the armor and these charms and all this. It becomes this like number crunching game of Munchkin as opposed to a game of like, I'm a horrific, rage filled beast that is trying to claw existence from the brink. And no matter what I do, we're going to fail. Like, it's not that. It's just number crunching.
Get a buff for the raid, bro.
Well,
Right.
that's the same thing happens in every system. You can even do that.
But
crap
more
in
so,
Wraith.
in
More so in
Guru.
Werewolf.
Like it's definitely part
Like,
of the
I've seen,
part of it.
yeah, it is part of it. And I've seen stupid shit for Sabat. We've seen stupid shit for rituals and all that
yes.
stuff for Sabat.
Not just rituals, just character sheets in general and fucking items, man.
Right. But it's when it's again that's the idea of the mechanics before story taking over. And I think that's a problem with maintaining horror. Like when players in your game, especially if they're doing LARP, are coming in and they're power game or munchkin or whatever you want to call it, they're putting mechanics before story, and they're just like, I have this big bonus stack for my traits and all my abilities, and I have bomb ties. I'm not afraid of anything. Cool. I'm glad we had this game. You know, it's such a weird.
Glad we had this talk.
It's such a weird thing, and there are ways to fix it. There are ways to pull it back from that area, and I'm sure that I know there are ways to make Guru scary. I just dump on Guru because my experience of Guru, especially in live action, has been just so humorous.
Munchkin-y.
Yeah, it's been so humorous. You know, it's like,
I know.
dude, what the fuck? I'd rather
Well,
play
a
as
lot of
Amisi.
your-
I'd rather
A
play
lot
as
of your
Amisi.
stuff, a lot of your stuff and your interactions with Werewolf, with the exception of the one independent game that I ran that got destroyed,
Yeah,
was org play.
yeah. Well, no,
Where
I've
you've got the big ass fucking sheets running around, and it's like, okay, we don't have
Oh,
to
no.
really be afraid of anything.
Oh,
so we have
no.
a fucking elder.
my first bullshit interactions with Guru were at Lilacia Park.
Oh,
Like,
that I can't help you with.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I was there.
I can't help you.
I
with
don't
that.
care, I don't care who you are. You still have to admit that the fact that the entire Guru populace was unable to invade that library and went home to look for runes was probably one of the best things in
Yeah.
all of my
Is that when the bridge was
experience.
open at Elysium?
Was that?
That's the entire werewolf pack,
I remember.
or the entire werewolf game came out of the woods and was like, all right, we're going to jump into the Shadowlands or not the Shadowlands. We're going to jump into the Umbra and we're going to come out in the middle of the library while the other half of all of the werewolves are going to storm the front entrance. And there was just like a dozen vampires out front with all the potents. And just like, it did not go well for the werewolves. Unfortunately, all of their planning came to naught because the vampires were just simply more power gamed.
You
Yeah.
just need to do fucking elder Ragabash at that
How about
point.
mages with
Talented,
arcane?
talented.
We got a chat thing. How about mages with arcane so high you don't remember what they look like after they mindfuck you? Or my favorite that Nate brought up last time, the mage with arcane or the person with arcane of 5 and true faith.
faith.
So you light on fire in the area, but you can't see the person. Like,
I'm not saying I've ever played that character before, but I've played that character before.
but you know, and Chris does bring a point up here in chat that it depends on the person running the game and how they set the story. I agree with that. I think that almost any of these splats we've talked about can be a good horror game and can be a very creepy game if you kind of amp up those spots and take it away from mechanics and take it more towards story. You know, but that's a lot of effort in some of these games, and it depends on if you're playing live action or if you're running tabletop. Tabletop, a lot easier. You have control over your entire game. You have
yeah.
control over everything. Live
If
action,
you have
That's
5-10 people, maybe,
at most, yeah.
Live action, you have a lovely issue of players.
Yeah. So I think they all can be good. I mean, I have my favorite stuff for creep factor, like Cathedral Flesh, Zamisi body horror stuff, some of the Wraith Moliate and Soul Forging. That thing is really cool, and we brought some fun ones from almost every splat in some regard here.
Hell,
But
Umbral Adventures and Guru can be fucking terrifying.
they should be. And I think, the New World of Darkness, Werewolf the Forsaken does a lot better job of that because in that setting, the spirits don't owe you shit. Like, they're under no obligations to do what you tell them to do. You have to force them into submission, either be it cleverness or by violence to get them to do what you want to do. Some do it, but most are like, yeah, make me, you know? So when you go to the Umbra, it's a scary fucking place. You know, and I think that's kind of interesting how the way they did that. But we're running up on about an hour and a half here, and we're only supposed to be here for an hour, so we've gone a bit over.
Again.
Yeah, again.
It's all right.
Guys, thank you all for coming out, both guests and people in chat. You guys are awesome. We didn't feel a lot of questions today, probably because we were just talking so much about stuff. Hold on here.
Yeah, I think we kind of went all over the place there.
We did. Chris says, too many modern STs rely on heavily on stats and number crunching and skip the detailed sub and description scene. You know why? Because they have to. Because the players coming to their game are forcing them to do so, and they're not taking the initiative to go, hey guys, stop. We're gonna run this, not this. And that's most particularly evidence with live action stuff. You know, you gotta.
Shit, we
gotta
tried
take
that
over.
with
That's
Sabat. Stop throwing powers at it.
Yep.
Yeah, the competition point of LARP is pretty omnipresent, and I've noticed that it's kind of it's turned into two different factions. It's like the old school LARP, which is like your org style LARPs. You know, I got all the powers, I've got all the rock paper scissors, and then you have like
point sheet.
right, and then you have like the I have complete agency over my character. It's Nordic LARP. There's no rules except do I want this to happen or not? And I think that there needs to be a happy medium. There needs to be an in between. You know, I'm all for like the freedom and agency of character and story, except I do believe that there should be ramifications for actions as well.
Yep.
And I don't think you should just have the freedom to do whatever the fuck you want and then go, nope, I don't agree that happens to my character. To me, that does not make a long-term solution.
Right, it defeats the purpose of the whole shared story aspect of role-playing games in general.
I think that
Player.
I try to sit in that middle ground. I like players having a bit of agency over what they're doing and the world around them, but at the same point in time, you got to bring them back to the rule set and the fact that, you know, there's a chance for failure and there's a chance that, you know, somebody's gonna be bigger than you are mechanically. Like, you got to find a happy medium, because I think that going too extreme to one side or the other, no matter which side it is, just makes the game not fun. At least not for me, you know?
And it's not long-term tenable.
Right.
Yeah,
Like, I can sit here and
really
crunch
the
numbers
point.
all day. Why do I want to do the shit that I do at work when I'm running a game?
Accounting
What's the point?
simulator.
And that's really the point. Like, you know, I've done Nordic LARP and it was fun, and it's fun for a night. It's a single event. Great. I'm just there to kind of like play this role. I go home. Maybe in a year I go back and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't do that long term. Like, there's just no way. You really can't even do it for one night without at least one or two people throwing a wrench into the cogs. And that, you know, super rock, paper, scissors focus, like everything's power, everything's a fucking battle scene. That's also not sustainable, because you're going to have people who are like, I came to role play. When does role play start? And everybody's in the corner like, we're fighting the monster. Can you just relax?
Right.
I don't find that fun either. And like 10 people do. And what happens is storytellers feel powerless and cater to those people because they fear the change that will come, and they fear losing those players, when in all honesty, it would be better to lose those 10 players to gain 20 solid role players.
That is, I think, the huge dilemma that a lot of orgs have. They don't want to lose their core players by pushing, you know, some changes through that those players wouldn't like. We had in Sabat, people would be like, I literally would tell us, we hate playing. Why do you have to role play through rituals? Why do you have to role play through like the Assortments of Cain or the Vaulderie? Can't we just say we do it? We're like, no. Like, you're missing a huge part of the game.
Part of what you're doing.
Right. Well, we just don't like playing rituals. What do you like doing then? Well, you know, role play. No, you don't. Like, this is a big part of who Sabat
You're
are.
not talking about role play. You're talking about role play.
Right. You just want to throw powers around and like, you know, have the benefit of your station without actually playing your station. If you're
or upholding the responsibilities you're supposed to have at your station.
My favorite, I'm an archbishop. I don't want to do the Vaulderie because can we just do the chops for it? You're an archbishop. This is your time to shine. Like, if you're the person who wants to do the Vaulderie for the city, for the S-Bot, then do it.
We could live stream for 4 hours about the fucking perils of playing in a live action game. I about gave up one time when I had a player honestly in character try to argue with me that the path of humanity was an acceptable path Right. That it was not only it was a path, it's not, and that it was acceptable for a member of the Sabbat to be on the path of humanity. And I was like, number one, it's not a path. I don't give a shit what stupid rules your org has decided to integrate into your game. I will not accept it. I will not listen to it. And also, fuck you. No, it's not. So, like, argument's over. But like, that's what
You and
the
I can have
conversation
that
was.
argument later.
Yeah, no,
We can't have that argument.
It's not an
We
argument.
Can't.
It's not an argument.
No, it's not up for debate.
It's just like the idea of people trying to turn this weird superhero leaf in the Sabbat. Why? I mean, I've seen it with
You're a
Salubrian.
monster. Be a
So
fucking
Lubrian and Trivia are the
monster.
biggest like abusers of this in the orgs, by the way. We want
I'm
to
blooded
be
by the code. The fuck you are.
the fuck you can get it. For one, even in the Dark Ages it was rare as fuck. But they're like, oh, we're gonna be these like ancient knights, like, but you're Sabbat.
Right.
You gave that up to become Sabbat.
No, that failed. It failed. It got you all
they-
killed. Like,
They
you
gave
know,
it up and became Sabbat and got fucking angry.
come on, man. Like, and it's just those types of things that I see in like org play that make me kind of go like, what the fuck is your genre? Like, do we read the same books? And I'm all up for interpretation, but there's certain things that are pretty hard set, like, and baked into the genre, right? Like, priests do rituals. It's part of your job. We don't like doing rituals because they bog down play. Well, the rituals are the reason you have a position. So you better fucking do them.
Right.
Trying
beyond
to be
that,
more interactive with other people.
All of these like key components, these rituals, these rites, these are all what makes the Sabbat a thing.
Yep.
These are your role play, right? Like, it's not just like, hey, let's get together and kick somebody's ass. It's the same thing with when you play the Camarilla. You play the politics, you play the roles, you play, if you're like, I don't want to be Primogen, that's just going to screw up my role play. What?
Play
That
Anarch.
bog
literally
down play?
is your role play.
Go play Anarch. Like,
Even anarchs have politics, you know what I mean? Like, these are all important functions of the game. And, having conversations about paths or engaging in the rituals, or at least allowing someone to describe them so that you get a feel. Like, if you don't want to just go play tabletop, go play a video game. Just like, if you want to throw rock, paper, scissors, there's like 1,000 other games that have much better systems that require less standing and moving to accomplish. So, like, just go home and sit in a chair.
right.
It's like, wow.
And all those arguments really take away from a lot of the settings, a lot of the intrinsic, more horrible aspects of those settings, the horror-based stuff. It takes away from that. You just want to skip all that and just do the mechanical shit. Go play something else. That's really kind of how I feel about it. So I agree with you 100% on that. However, we're almost at 140, so the Brewhouse went on strike because of that. The Lark game played politics went too far and became college association politics simulator. That's...
I could see that happening.
Yeah, politics can turn into... My problem with politics and vampires when they get cliquish from out-of-game stuff. That's the problem. But
That's always a thing that happens.
But we're going to go ahead and cut this so people get to do the things they got to do. Guys, again, thank you so much for joining. All right. Again, thanks you guys for coming out. Next Thursday, we'll figure out what we're going to do. It has yet to be decided, but it'll be up. Also, next Friday will be Cthulhu Tech, so come around for that. Yeah, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming by.